4-part series, just because I wanted to recommend something against the Carol Khan defense, because it's a pretty popular way of playing for black. And I got a game here that was played in London in 1982 between two grandmasters, Hort and Mestel. And this game is pretty typical and pretty thematic of what you're going to see in your games if you play the Panov-Botvinnik Attack. And so that's what this is going to be. This whole line is going to be about e4, c6, d4, and d5 here. And the way the Panov attack starts, see, normally knight c3, or we'd see that maybe the advanced variation with e5, and those are fine ways of playing also, but I think the most the way to grab the initiative here is to play for the Panov-Botvinnik attack by exchanging these pawns and playing c4. And you notice right away that if black takes, then it's just going to help white's development as the bishop's going to go to c4. So normally knight f6 is universally played here, and you go knight c3. So you're keeping some pressure on the center, and there's a wide number of moves here. The main move here is knight to c6, but you're going to see g6 in these lines. You're going to see e6. Well, those are the two main ones. And against g6, you're going to have to look into these two. But I recommend playing a strategy based on queen b3. You can look into those lines by yourself. And against e6, I'm going to recommend bishop g5 with a likely transposition to the type of position that we're going to see in this game, which started with knight c6 on move 5 and bishop g5. And this is the main the main sort of position I wanted to look at. Instead of bishop g5, knight f3 is the other main move here, but this actually this will lead to the endgame, the classical Panov endgame that we used to see in Bobby. There was a classic game of Bobby Fischer versus you, I believe, in Fischer's book, and you could go into this endgame, which is close to a draw, but it's also a very tricky way to play. And this is to me is the most interesting. Bishop g5 here, and you notice right away that we're allowing black to take here and then take here with either the queen or the knight. And we're gonna get into the what happens in that case later on. But in this game, we're gonna look at e6 here, the main move, one of the main moves, where we go knight f3, bishop e7. This is typical. Black breaks the pin, and now c5 was played. So normally in these lines, you see white expanding on the queen side here, trying to gain space. Normally white will castle on the king side. The bishop will go to either d3 or b5. Queen normally goes to c2, and the rook comes here. That's the general course of the development here for white. So we see black castle, rook c1 was played, and now b6. So black trying to chip away white's queenside expansion. Now bishop b5. A nice in between move hitting this knight. which has to be defended by bishop d7. But now white just trades bishops here and follows up with b4. Or he trades minor pieces and then follows up with b4. Now that there's no knight on c6, b4 doesn't have to be defended. And so now black goes ahead and just takes on c5. And instead of retaking right away, we see knight e5 here. So knight gets the e5 square. The bishop is defended by rook c8. And now white retakes on c5. So here you can see white has a slight advantage based on this, just having this knight sitting here on e5. Knight e4 here. This is a typical idea that you're going to see, and to lead to exchanges here, you just have to remember to take on e7, and queen takes e7 here. Just castle. You're not afraid of this trade of knights here. And after knight takes c3, you just retake with the rook. So, and now you can kind of see why it was useful to play rook c1 at that moment in the game, to get it out of the way. Now that the knight was defended, white easily got castled, retook with the rook, and now f6. So knight takes on c6 here, rook takes on c6, and now rook e1. And so rook b8 is played. Black trying to infiltrate on the b file, while white's strategy is more focused on this backward e pawn here and trying to get control of the e file. Queen a4, so hitting this rook, and black is forced into a kind of passive defense here, playing rook c8, and now f4. So f4, if you notice, prevents black's only useful pawn break would be e5. So he's preventing black's only good pawn break. Queen b7 here, rook b3. So just denying black any play on the b file. Now queen c7, rook f3. So now white wants to threaten f5. So queen b7 was played, but f5 would have been better here to stop white from playing f5. So they dance around for a little bit, but instead of a draw by repetition, we see queen d1, and now rook a6. Again, f5 here, rook a6 here, rook fe3. So now trying to put pressure, trying to apply pressure on this e-pawn. Queen d7. Defending, and then just tripling on the e-file here with queen e2. Rook a4. We just take on e6. Yeah, black takes on d4. But after c6, we can see white definitely has an advantage in this position, which he plays rook e8 check first. Queen takes e8, and then queen f8, and white just trades. Actually, black resigned right here, but you can see after king takes here, a move like rook c1 would be all it would take to win that game, where we see this guy is going to be running. So that was a typical game that you'll see. We'll recap just the opening real quick, go through the opening, and just shows a typical idea here. Remember, their bishop typically goes to g5 in these lines, unless g6 is played, and you just get your knight out, and you typically wait for black to move his dark square bishop before you close this up, right? You want to close up the queen side and try to expand with b4. And the way this was done was the prophylactic rook c1, bishop b5, hitting the knight. And after this trade was made, white was able to play b4 and get his knight to e5, and before retaking on c5. And this was just a typical position that you could get in one of your games too. So just remember this sort of setup. And this is typical, that whenever black plays knight e5 here, trying to trade pieces, just take here first. And instead of taking the knight here, remember this idea here, just getting your rooklet in whenever black tries to trade. So I hope this this game was instructive, and we're going to look at another one in the next part. Thank you guys.